Throughout my life, I'd go through phases, different hobbies, interests, things I'd obsess over for a year or two before moving on to the next. During the summer of 2022, that hobby was fishing. About an hour's drive from home, my family owns an old shore house tucked beside a lagoon. We've had it for decades, quiet place with a small Boston whaler and just enough room to escape. That summer, my friends and I would head down almost every weekend, sometimes to fish, other times just to hang out. It was that following October, after the warmth had faded and the beach crowds were long gone, when two of my close friends, Brendan and Jay, decided to head down for the weekend. We wanted one more shot at catching striper, since they're more active in the fall. Brendan was the die-hard fisherman of the group, the reason I got into fishing in the first place. The only problem was, the boat was out of the water for maintenance, so that weekend, we stuck to piers and the beach. Brendan came prepared, as always, with every rod, rig, and setup we'd need. We met up that Friday afternoon, packed the car, and drove down to the shore house. That evening we fished off different piers along the inlet. Night fell fast, and only one of us had caught anything. Of course, it was Brendan. Just a small base, though. Nothing worth writing home about. Still, we weren't ready to call it quits. We decided to stay up and fish through the night off a beach Brendan knew about. He said it was good for stripers around this time of year. The spot was about 15 minutes away, down a long, desolate road flanked by thick woods. Eventually, it opened up into what looked like an abandoned gravel parking lot. Brendan suggested we bring everything with us now so we wouldn't have to make the walk back to the car later. We were planning to stay until sunrise anyway. So we packed light but smart, rods, tackle, a couple coolers, beach chairs, and a speaker. The path to the beach was narrow, about a 5-minute walk through overgrowth, but it eventually opened into a wide, empty shoreline. Moonlight shimmered on the waves, and the sand stretched endlessly in both directions. It felt like we were the only people on Earth. We set up near the waterline. One cooler was filled with snacks, water, and a few beers. The other had ice for any fish we caught. Brendan brought his massive surf rods, along with metal rod holders that he hammered into the sand. At the end of each rod tip, he clipped on small bells. They'd ring if a fish struck. It was quiet, peaceful. We cracked a few beers, turned on the speaker, and waited. Within a couple of hours, each of us had landed a solid fish. Spirits were high. Music was playing, the stars were out, and we were just talking about life, laughing and watching the rods. But then, things started to change. Jay suddenly stopped mid-sentence. He turned down the music and snapped his head to the left. "You hear that?" he asked. Brendan and I looked at each other. "Hear what?" I said. Jay was focused. He stared off into the dark. I swear I just heard someone yell, like, "Hey," or something. We laughed at first, figured he was messing with us, but he swore he wasn't. Said it sounded distant, but human. There were no houses nearby, no other cars in the lot. We were in the middle of nowhere. Still, it made us uneasy. We shrugged it off, played the music again, tried to go back to normal. Maybe 10 minutes passed. I had just cast out a fresh line when something in my peripheral vision caught my attention. A shape, dark, upright, moving slowly across the sand. I froze. There's someone coming, I said. All three of us turned toward it. Sure enough, a person was walking toward us. A lone figure, no flashlight, no sound. He got closer. A white man, mid-40s, wearing a dark blue jacket with the hood pulled tight and a baseball cap underneath. His face was barely visible. The way he walked was off, like he had no reason to be out here, but was determined anyway. We muted the speaker. Everything went still. He came up, maybe 10 feet from us, and stood. We tried to play it cool. "What's up?" Brendan asked. The man looked at us, slowly, then said in a low, gravelly voice, "What are you boys up to?" We paused. Brendan answered, "Just fishing." The man gave a slight nod, grunted, then said nothing. He just stood there, staring, at us, at the rods, at the water. I could feel my pulse in my neck. We all exchanged a look, like, is this guy about to try something? Then the bell on one of our rods rang. I quickly said, "We got one," and walked over, mostly just to break the tension. I reeled in a small striper. When I turned back around, the man was gone. We looked around. Nothing. His silhouette was already fading into the darkness, swallowed by the night. We sat in silence for a bit. It was unsettling, but he hadn't done anything, just stared. We figured he was just some oddball, maybe camping nearby. Still, the vibe had totally shifted. The music stayed off after that. We kept fishing, cracked another round of beers, and tried to relax. That's when I heard something. A high-pitched, distant chirp, then another, a car alarm. It took a second for it to click, but when it did, my blood went cold. "That's mine," I said. It was the only car in that lot. There weren't even any homes around here for miles. We dropped everything, rods, chairs, coolers, and ran. It took maybe 2 minutes to get back. The sight made my stomach drop. My front tire was slashed. Driver's side window shattered. I called the police immediately. I gave the dispatcher our location and told her what had just happened. She asked if I had any idea who might have done it. I told her about the man. While I was still on the line with her, we heard rustling in the woods near us, branches snapping, something moving. It felt like we were being hunted. We didn't wait. We took off, sprinting 200 yards down the road, hiding in a clump of trees. I whispered to the dispatcher what was happening. She told us to stay hidden and stay quiet. 10 minutes later, 2 police cruisers rolled up the road with lights flashing. We waved them down and ran back to the lot. 3 officers were already searching the woods. They found my wallet missing, cash gone, a bunch of Brendan's gear was stolen, and about 10 feet from the trees, they found a large hunting knife stuck into the dirt. They bagged it for fingerprints. I gave my statement while still shaking. The officers told us we made the right call by running, that whoever that man was, it was likely he intended to do us harm. That hit hard. They helped us gather what was left of our stuff and gave us a ride back to the house. We didn't sleep that night. Jay got us a ride back home the next morning. I picked up my car from a shop a few days later. Insurance barely covered the damage. We never heard back from the police. No follow-up call, no arrest. That man is probably still out there. That night changed everything for me. What was supposed to be a peaceful weekend trip became the most terrifying experience of my life. I haven't fished since, and I don't think I ever will. I went fishing alone one early spring morning at a place known for its calm water, old legends, and ancient trees. Caddo Lake, the only natural lake in Texas. That whole area has an atmosphere, something quiet but heavy, like the air itself remembers things you'd rather forget. I launched from an old bait shop locals call a marina, though it's really just a shack with a rusted metal sign, a creaky dock, and a ramp that's half covered in moss. It sits along Big Cypress Bayou, upriver from the main lake. Most folks don't go fishing alone out there, not this deep, but I've always liked solitude. At least I used to. As I paddled down the bayou, weaving through the shadows of towering cypress trees, I passed abandoned houseboats, half sunk and rotting. Some had names like Miss Jean or Blue River Queen still faintly visible on their hulls. One of them had a door swinging open and shut with the breeze. I remember thinking, who lived out here? Who just left? Eventually, the bayou opened up into the lake, and I turned off the main channel. I was nearly swamped twice by airboats roaring past without slowing down. That's when I decided to get away from the commotion and paddled hard toward a more isolated area on the eastern side, between thick cypress knees, duckweed, and hanging Spanish moss. The water narrowed again into a quiet, still pocket of the lake. The place was so secluded, so still, I felt like I had stepped into a painting. Turns out the area is known locally as Wangdoodle Pass. Ridiculous name, but it stuck with me for reasons I didn't yet understand. I dropped anchor in the middle of the pool, about 18 feet deep. My kayak drifted gently, bow pointed north. The trees surrounded the water like ancient sentinels. It was dead quiet, not even birdsong. That should have told me something. The fishing started off great. Panfish were biting constantly, reindeer, warmouth, bluegill, pumpkin seed. I was pulling in one after another. I felt like I'd struck gold. I even laughed out loud at how perfect it all was. I kept thinking, nobody else even knows about this spot. That's when it happened. I hooked a larger bluegill, maybe the best of the day. It surfaced about 20 yards away, and in a moment I still don't fully understand. It jumped, cleared the surface like a base. I'd never seen a bluegill do that. I remember pausing, watching the ripples. Then it dove hard. The rod bent violently. Before I could react, the tip slammed into the water, and whatever had grabbed that fish pulled with enough force to slam the reel into the surface. Then it passed underneath me. I felt a massive thud against the bottom of the kayak, and then, in an instant, I was in the water. My kayak flipped like a toy. Something had yanked it, and me, straight over. Underwater, everything was disorienting. I couldn't tell where the surface was at first. My heart was pounding, lungs burning. When I finally surfaced, coughing and gasping, my kayak was upside down, and my rod was gone. I grabbed the hull and held on. I looked east, and that's when I saw it. A wake, not a fish, not a gator surfacing, just movement, a smooth swell, heading away from me. Something big, powerful. It was taking my rod and reel with it. I remember thinking, what the hell just happened? Maybe 4 seconds had passed from the moment that bluegill jumped. That was all it took to go from peaceful morning to whatever the hell this was. I clung to the hull of the kayak, my arms numb and shaking. I didn't know what was beneath me, and I didn't want to find out. I was terrified to kick my legs, afraid I might brush something solid, something alive. I had never practiced remounting the kayak from the water. I cursed myself. I started trying anyway, slapping the side, kicking, slipping off again and again. My mind was spiraling. I kept glancing around the still water, expecting to see a ripple, a fin, something. The silence out there was unbearable. Not a bird, not a boat, not even the sound of wind, just the occasional creak of cypress limbs above, and the cold reality that I was completely alone in a place that doesn't much care if you make it home. And then there were the stories. I remembered them suddenly, stories I'd heard growing up, about people disappearing out on Caddo Lake, about strange lights, about animals pulled under without a splash, about massive ancient alligator gars the size of small cars, and log gators, gators so big they look like driftwood until it's too late. There's a saying out there, the lake gives what it wants, and takes what it pleases. I blew my whistle, once, twice, again, and again. After about an hour, nothing. No one. My lips were dry. My legs were cramping. I started thinking maybe I'll have to swim for it, but I was deep in the pass, and the trees were thick. My sense of direction was fading. That's when I heard a motor, faint, distant. I blew the whistle again, frantically. A small John boat came puttering into view. 2 older men in overalls and camo hats. One of them squinted, pointed at me, and laughed. "You sure picked the wrong place for a swim, bud." They helped me back onto the overturned kayak. I thanked them probably a dozen times. One of them said, "You know, there's gators in Caddo big enough to flip a boat. Probably a good idea not to dangle out here." Then the other said, "Or worse. You ever heard about them submerged holes? Big ones. They open up and things just vanish." I didn't respond. I didn't have the energy. I paddled back slowly, shaken, every sound making me flinch. Total losses that day. iPhone, $250 worth of gear, a full stringer of fish, my peace of mind, and maybe something else I can't explain. Ever since, I've learned how to remount in water. I keep my gear tied down. I tell people where I'm going now, but one thing hasn't changed. I still don't know what pulled me under that day, and I haven't gone back to Wangdoodle Pass since. Lakes are supposed to be peaceful, quiet, a place to unwind with friends, maybe cast a few lines and soak in the sun. But what happened that afternoon on Kentucky Lake changed the way I see those calm waters forever. It started off like any normal day. There were 4 of us, 2 guys, 2 girls, heading to the lake to relax. We brought drinks, music, and fishing rods. It was meant to be casual, a low-key escape, The dock we went to was part of a community area, freshly built, about 200 feet long, stretching way out into the water. There were no boats tied up, no one else around, just us. We were the only people on the water. While the others chilled at the end of the dock, I hung back about 20 feet, fishing alone, hoping to hook some bass. The air was warm, the lake glassy and still. It felt like summer's last breath, but that silence didn't last. They were already a few drinks ahead of me. I was the only one focused on fishing. I'd later find out that one of the girls had taken Xanax, which wasn't obvious at first, but became painfully clear soon enough. The three of them were lying out at the edge of the dock, laughing, joking, soaking in the sun. I was mid-cast when I suddenly heard a splash behind me. At first I didn't even turn around. My girlfriend, now my ex, started laughing. I assumed someone had jumped in for fun or was pulling a prank. But then 10 seconds passed. Then 15. Still no one surfaced. The laughter stopped. The mood flipped in an instant. Panic set in. I dropped my rod, ran to the edge, and dove in without hesitation. Now let me say this. Diving into a lake isn't like diving into a pool. The second you go under, your mind starts fighting you. It's pitch black, cold, and disorienting. But I didn't have time to think. I went as deep as I could, arms out, feeling blindly through dark water. My hands grazed nothing. No body, no hair, no limbs. I broke the surface to gasp for air and shouted at my girlfriend, "Are you sure this is where she went in?" She was crying now, screaming her name, nodding, completely panicked. I dove again, deeper this time, pushing through that instinctual fear. I swept my arms in wide arcs, hoping to make contact with anything. Still nothing. I surfaced again. My other friend, the guy, was pacing back and forth at the edge of the dock, frozen. I don't think he could swim, or maybe he was too scared to try. At this point, it had been over a minute, and all I could think was, I might not find her. This might actually be it. She might die right here, 10 feet away from us, just beneath the surface. I knew I had one more chance. One final dive. So, I took the deepest breath I could, kicked hard, and dove straight down. The water grew colder the farther I went. Suddenly, I felt a pressure change. That eerie drop when you know you're nearing the bottom. The lake bed. I hit mud. It was thick, soft, disgusting. I stood on it and started sweeping my feet side to side, trying to feel for her. My hands out, blind, my legs brushing sticks, branches, and God knows what else. I was about to give up, and then I felt something. Hair, long drifting strands brushing against my elbow. I grabbed it and pulled her toward me. Her body was completely limp, not moving. I locked my arms under her armpits, planted my feet, and kicked off the lake bed as hard as I could. We rose slowly. The water warmed. And finally, we broke the surface. My girlfriend's face lit up when she saw us. Relief washed over her, until she realized that the girl I was pulling wasn't breathing, not moving at all. We hauled her onto the dock. It took everything we had. She felt heavy, dead weight, lifeless. The other guy finally helped. I don't know if it was adrenaline or guilt, but between the three of us, we got her onto the wooden planks. And just when I started to accept the worst, I saw her chest move. Barely, but enough. She was breathing. Slow, shallow, but alive. We tried to wake her, shook her, splashed her with water, shouted her name over and over. All we got was a groan or two. She was totally out of it, completely unresponsive. We had no choice. We carried her back to the car, carefully, quietly. Halfway down the road, she started to come to. Her eyes opened a little bit again, but she didn't remember anything. Not the dock. Not the water. Not nearly drowning. Not even the drive there. The next day, she didn't believe a word we said. She had no memory of any of it. Not the splash. Not the silence. Not how close she came to dying.